Hello everyone, I'm Jennifer Annenberg, and today I'm here with construction rock star Larry Schuitemaker. If you haven't been raised in Cincinnati or you haven't been around the last 55 years, you probably haven't seen the Schuitemaker-Dugan construction cars or construction sites that have been around for a long, long time. Welcome, Larry, to our show. And I'm so honored to have him here because we have so much to talk about. And this man has so many facets to him besides construction, such as being a pilot, a race car driver, and his background is so fascinating because he is so humble, and he started out as a carpenter, which I find so fascinating, and he's been through a lot, ups and downs, which a lot of entrepreneurs do, and not only that, making very wise business decisions, which I hope to talk about. I think that one of the interesting things before we start is the Schuitemaker-Dugan name came from the fact that he bought his partner out, Dugan Construction, which was a very wise decision. And the Dugan Construction was not doing very well, but it had key clients like General Electric and Keebler. And I think Larry just saw this as such a future of repeat business, and then it became the Schuitemaker-Dugan Company. So welcome again, Larry, and thank you so much and for being here and really be an example to so many.
Well, thank you very much for having me this morning.
And I just wanted to start out saying, if you could describe yourself, who is Larry to you? Who is Larry?
Well, I guess in some ways I'm still a carpenter. I try to still identify myself with the construction people that we have working for us. We have 100 or so mechanics working for us, and I guess that's my main love. Over the years, I guess 25 years ago, we decided to go into the land development business. And I suppose that's what I sort of graduated from the carpenter to being a general contractor, now being a land development business. But we still maintain our construction operation. And the land development business is, I think we have the largest industrial park in greater Cincinnati, and it's been very successful. We built the first new interchange off of I-75 in southwestern Ohio, I think it was 11 or 12 years ago, and opened up about 3,000 acres of ground out in the Westchester, Fairfield area.
And by that you really mean by the folks who maybe not knowing. I mean, this was a leap of faith. This was when someone said, what are you doing? I mean, this was the Union Center Boulevard that is now, extremely, people are flocking. I mean, this is really something that people thought you were crazy.
Well, they did. Yeah, I can remember walking my dog through the partially constructed 5-lane roads that run in and out from the interchange, and one of the paving contractors coming to me or driving through after work one day and saying, "Larry, do you really realize what's going to happen here? There's soybean and cornfields every place, and there's cattle in nearby fields." It looked pretty rural.
Yeah.
But it worked out.
Now they're looking back saying, well, he knew. But how much of being a success is taking a leap of faith? I mean, people, I think, who watch our show, they're trying to find their purpose and their passion. They're trying to find the formula for success. And we're highlighting, people like you. What do you feel that that's a big component of how to be successful? Taking that leap of faith?
Well, as long as you've thought it out pretty well. To start with.
True, but I mean, do you feel you've taken some leaps without thinking through? Do you feel like that has happened in some times?
Oh, no. To be truthful about it, no. Because these things would have put me completely out of business, which I struggled for years and years and years to get a going business. And I couldn't afford to take huge risks that would have absolutely exhausted all my...
Well, and you had a family to feed as well.
I had 4 children and
Yes.
to support, and
That's right.
And so I had that to think about.
That's right. 55-year marriage, by the way. Very good.
Yeah. And
wonderful.
So I had to be careful that I didn't take huge leaps. Once again, I'm repeating myself.
Yeah.
That would put me out of business entirely. So things were pretty well thought out. I think other people thought they were huge leaps of faith, and not thought out, and were more just sort of instinctive, but they weren't. I've always been sort of calculated about what I've done in business, and it's just fortunately it's worked out for me.
I mean, what qualities do you think are, what qualities do you think are important for success then, in
Well-
your eyes?
Well, I think good luck is part of it.
So do you believe in luck then?
Oh, I do believe in luck.
Do you believe in the right time, right space then, or do you believe in meeting
Well,
the right people? Or
Well, certainly in people. Over the years, I've been very fortunate to hire intelligent people that really know what they're doing and have been very faithful to me and can see the common goal. I mean, it goes all the way back to my racing career. I raced sports cars in amateur events for 10 years or so, and I decided then that I would spend a little bit more time and get into the professional ranks, and I hired a young fellow by the name of John Wright to run my professional racing operation, and to be honest about it, he's an automotive genius.
he is. I do know he's really wonderful.
No higher education, but certainly applies himself. And through that, we won 3 national championships and had a good time and made a lot of progress in racing in the professional ranks.
And how important do you think then is education in achieving the goals you want in life? I mean, again, for people who really may use that as an excuse, or may say, I have all the education in the world, and use that as an excuse. What is it, I mean, do you feel that that's necessary? I mean, or is drive necessary? Is certain other things necessary for success?
Well, I think the drive is a necessary. It is a necessary item. I think you have to really have the desire
Yes.
to achieve, and maybe that's more important than the education. Certainly, the education today in 2012 is a whole lot more important than when I started in business 50 some odd years ago. But I think you still have to have the fire in the belly and be willing to work a lot, which is not very romantic.
Yeah.
But it's just the effort raw effort that you have to put in, and that's absolutely necessary. You see that trait in practically everybody that's successful, I think. In Cincinnati, the Lindner family is very well known, have been very successful, and 3 brothers, Carl, Richard, and Robert. Robert's still alive, the other 2 are gone. But I don't think any of them went to college.
Right.
And been very, very successful, and they were very driven, hard-nosed business people.
Yes.
And good models.
Excellent. So Larry, then when we mention hard work, and that is one of the qualities you feel to be successful, why is it then that people who work hard and sort of like, you know, let's say a waitress or a roofer, or people who constantly say they work hard, why is it that they are not successful?
Well, I think it's that inner drive that we talked about. I think I have a sort of an interesting thought about that. When I
Awesome.
was a kid, I lived on the 4th Hole High Park Country Club, which at the time was probably one of the most prestigious golf courses in Cincinnati. Unfortunately, I lived on the wrong end of the golf course and the wrong end of the tracks, and so I caddied a lot. Okay?
Yes.
And while I wasn't raised poor, we didn't have any problem having something to eat. It was very modest circumstances. But I was exposed to a lot of wealthy Cincinnati industrialists and so on and so forth when I caddied, and I kept seeing what they were doing, and the resources that they had, and so on and so forth. And then I compare it to how we lived, my mom and dad and my 2 sisters and I. And there was just a huge gulf, you know, and I thought, well, yeah, there has to be some way to attain that. Other people did it. And so I think that was sort of the spark plug that kind of got me thinking about that. And I think if you don't have the opportunity to see the difference, or some avenue to attain that, I think that's why the waitress remains a waitress. I actually have a hard time figuring out why a waitress doesn't wind up being the head waitress and then becoming the restaurant owner. And I'm lost there. The same way with the roofer. I don't quite figure out why he doesn't sooner or later develop his own crew, start in a very small way in the roofing business, and then move up the ladder. It seems to me to be very easy to do.
It's a very interesting point that you bring up, though, of exposure, and maybe that is an added quality to the formula of success then. And you know, as we try to explore this and try to allow people to formulate their own methodology, or to how to a roadmap, if you will, to their own magnificence, then you know, exposure is and how to get exposure. There are, you know, we always hear the story of someone who is like you said, maybe on the wrong side of the road, so to speak, or you know, born without, and they have that one person who inspires them, or that one person who took them to a journey somewhere, and then they find or see something that inspires them, and that is actually what propels them for the rest of their life. So perhaps what you're saying is quite remarkably true, and drives them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, that's a fact. You know, the tough thing about being born to modest means and so on and so forth isn't just the fact that you didn't get possibly a great education like might have been better.
Right.
But you weren't introduced to the contacts, the bankers and the lawyers and the movers and shakers and so on and so forth. And that's almost worse, because you don't know anyone. So you have to create from scratch contacts, and they always start off very modest to begin with, and then hopefully they move up the ladder as your job capability does.
Well, that's true. And what would you say to someone, you know, as far as, did you ever have a feeling that it all clicked for you, that you felt, wow, I feel that I got it. You know, I feel that I'm in the I'm in the flow. I feel like I'm successful. I mean, did you ever feel that way of yourself? And can you remember a time?
Well, I have. Over a 55-year period of being in business, I guess once in a while,
once in a while,
as my dad used to say, my dad was not a workaholic, good family man, not a workaholic by a long shot. He said, Larry, stop and smell the roses. So occasionally, once in every 3 or 4 months or something like that, you just have a chance to reflect and say, well, you know, I haven't really done too terribly bad. I have this other project that I like to move towards, but if I never get there, I'm relatively happy with what I have.
Yeah. Well,
that doesn't last very long, though.
Isn't it? Yeah, I wish it would last longer. But what's the best advice you did ever get from someone, and who was it from?
Well, I really have to think about that. But
well, how about what about the best advice you ever gave to someone? Either one, and maybe it's the same. Maybe one of your sons. You 3 sons who work in the business.
I guess the answer to that is there's always somebody out there that you're competing with that's smarter than you, is more well off than you, and has more contacts and abilities and so on and so forth. So the only way that you combat that is just working harder than somebody else. It's once again not very romantic, but that's how you combat that, because you're never the brightest and you're never the sharpest. It's impossible to be that in every phase of your life.
Yeah. And to me, it's interesting though that we're living in a time, regardless of how the economics are, and regardless, you know, again, it doesn't matter what the state of affairs are in the world, that this generation seems to be more, as at least in our Western society, seems to be more depressed, seems to be more lethargic, lost, if you will. And our youth is actually projected to not live as long as the generation before it, which has never ever happened in any other generation. Why? Do you think? Have you ever heard of that? I mean, it's astounding. And people are not finding their passions, their purpose. Is there do you have an opinion about that? Well, and that's part of the reason why we're doing this.
Well,
you know,
I don't have the facts to disagree with that, but I don't I don't see it personally. You know, I have 4 children, 3 of which work in my business. I have 2 sons and a daughter that works there. The other daughter lived in Paris for 15 years, and she still works for a French company, although she's in the U.S. I don't see it in them. I've got 10 grandchildren, and I don't see it in any of them. They all seem to be mentally sharp and relatively happy, and so I don't see it there. But I'm not going to say that element doesn't exist someplace. And I do agree that I think because of international disruptions and so on and so forth, a lot of people are sort of in a funk, if you will, and we need to drag ourselves out of that somehow or another. I think it's our leadership in Washington that needs to be the leaders on that, and I think that the media just dwells and dwells and dwells on the awful stories.
Yes.
And you almost never hear the positive stories.
I agree, and I think you can get really funneled into that, and that's one thing. Well, maybe that's another formula.
Yeah.
Don't watch negative things and focus on positive things.
That's true. There are people that I know that absolutely refuse to watch the 10 or 11 o'clock news because
I'm one.
they can't sleep afterwards.
No,
You know.
it gets you hyped up and it gets you negative, and it pulls you like onto a vortex almost,
Right.
into negativity. And yeah, I agree.
We might have been better years ago when, if something happened in Washington, they didn't find out in Texas till a year later. You know,
Well, they said Cincinnati was what Mark Twain said, we're 50 years behind.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think that's the case anymore.
If the world ever ends, he wants to be in
Cincinnati, because he wasn't right.
They won't know about it until
50 years
later.
right. Okay, so if you could change one thing about the world or anything in general, what would you change? If there's one thing you could change, you had your power to change, and it could be in your industry or in the world.
Well, in my industry, I've sort of changed everything that I have the capacity to change, and it's worked out pretty successful for myself and a lot of my present and former employees. So
That says a
that was
lot.
pretty easy. But when you talk about changing the country or the world for a Cincinnati contractor, that's a big order. But I do think that education is an important issue, especially in the poorer sectors of all our inner cities. And education is certainly the secret to happiness and being able to move forward. I think that's where we're lacking. I don't know. I have some feelings sometimes that our plan to break up communities in downtown, regardless of race and so on and so forth, if they lived in the inner city and so on and so forth, the idea of, well, let's bus them out to the suburbs and do this and that. Well, what they really did is they broke down the structure where poor families had an important element, which was a family structure. There was always a great aunt or a grandmother or somebody that would take care of the children while the mother and father worked and so on, and that's all resolved.
Yeah.
So
phenomenal. Yeah.
I think that could be corrected some way or another.
Yes, I agree. And for someone who's watching and who's on the couch and maybe stuck in a relationship, or stuck in a job they don't like, or maybe at home and not necessarily happy, or in a job and wants to be home, what nugget of wisdom or grain of truth can you offer them to take the step towards the life they want to live? In other words, would you say you're not stuck? And what is one little nugget of wisdom you could give them to take a step towards the life they want to live?
Well, not to take your question too lightly, but first thing I do is get off the couch.
Yeah,
And, and really get out and get involved in your community. You know, whether or not it's playing sports or you know, quite often actually volunteering to help in certain areas would inspire yourself as much as it help yourself as much as it would be the beneficiaries of your efforts.
Yes.
And I think if you stop feeling sorry for yourself, you have a better picture. It's people that feel like they're embedded in this awful situation and then start feeling more and more sorry for themselves, are almost beyond help. They have to first uh, see a better way for themselves and drag themselves. I'm not too sure that somebody else outside can really help with that.
I agree, and I think that it empowers themselves when you do a step towards yourself and you stop assigning every little, I can't do it because of this. I can't do that. You give yourself reasons for not getting off the couch,
Well,
and
right.
it sounds like we're being harsh, but you've had tough times. We've all had tough times, and I know we could actually go through tough. You've had family to support, and I know I've read about your tough times. I don't know if you wanted to. Well, we could talk about. There was a time when you didn't know if you were going to be able to feed your family. You were between your carpentry work and that Nashland, Mr. Nashland, and you're working for him. And what got you through that? I mean, you could have actually gone back and said, "Well, I don't know what I'm going to do."
Well,
What got you? What made you go forward? You had I guess it was the drive. It was the will. It was.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I worked for Mr. Nashland, who's long gone, a construction company, as an apprentice, and then a carpenter, and finally a superintendent. But all during that time, I did scaffolding projects on the weekends for a scaffolding company here in Cincinnati. I always had little home remodeling things I was doing for different people, and so I struggled through and finally wound up with actually $5,000 that I had, and my earlier partner, Mr. Williams, scraped up $5,000, and that's what we started in business with. So we had
Amazing.
all of $10,000, which sounds like a pittance, but that's what we started with.
But I think that those things happen when you take one step, that step becomes another step, and I think life sort of flows and sort of supports you in that way to get to your goals. I mean, then you got the thriftway store, then you got your life sort of had these sort of segments, these moments where then things flow together. I mean, your life's not an overnight journey. You didn't get into the seat overnight. I mean, it was one step after the next, and now you're here and you have over 100 employees, and you basically, I think, conquered the city. I mean,
not hardly.
but you're an inspiration, and
Yeah.
now I think what you're able to do with this is, you're still young and gorgeous, and you're able to do things like, like I said, go through dreams of racing cars. And I think that for the person because I think when I mention relationship, I think where you are in one area of life, you are in all, whether it's a job or relationship or anything. If you feel stuck, you're stuck. And hopefully, that what you're saying is true. I do believe that. It's the first step.
Well, I feel very happy that I've pretty much accomplished what I wanted to do in life. You get never completely happy. I'm 76 years old, but I still have ambitions to do some more things, But I'm
Absolutely.
pretty happy with the way my family turned out, and my marriage, for that matter, and my racing career. I took up flying 10 years ago. Now I'm an instrument-rated pilot, and I've
That's
flown a
phenomenal.
couple thousand hours, and done it all fairly successfully. And I think it just takes applying yourself. And that's what people need to do more of, I think. Rather than, there's always an excuse, gee, I didn't have really time to do that. Well, that doesn't really hold water. It's just that you didn't want to, you'd rather do something else than do that thing that you should have done.
Excellent.
And so it's just a matter of applying yourself in the right direction.
Excellent. And I'd like to ask, what would you like to be known for?
I'm not so sure about that. I suppose I'd like to be known as a good family man, that I was a key element in developing the I-75 Cincinnati to Dayton corridor. I think we had the first big development along that corridor, and I'd be happy to be known for that as well.
I think you are already, and I think you're known for a lot more. And I love that when we had a little off-camera moment, that you said, you know what, I told Larry how inspired I was for him to be here, and he said, I don't know, I'm just a regular guy. And I think that it just is a testimony to who you are and how far you've come. And I want to thank you for being here and being an inspiration to so many, and for being a local celebrity and in our Cincinnati. And we're actually in Northern Kentucky now. But
It's hard to be a celebrity in the construction business. There aren't many celebrities or rock stars. You
yeah,
know?
well, you are a rock star in that. But thank you very much.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Come find yourself. The world needs you, all of you. How long are you willing to wait? Are you ready